Take a picture. You be ready.
Well, I clicked the button. See, so, and I think YouTube is running a little ad right now. So maybe by this point, people are watching us. So, hey, y'all. Hey, we're
Hello.
live. We're live. Thank you for joining me on our regularly scheduled Wednesday night YouTube live. Now that I'm back in Mexico City, we can be back on our regular schedule. And tonight I am joined by It's Sharita's World, aka Miss Sharita Jennings, who is a digital nomad. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight is, do you bop around? Do you move one place and settle down? What's going to be the right choice for you?
Yeah.
If you are new here, whether you're new in the audience tonight or you're watching this on the replay, welcome to the channel. I'm Adelia, known as Spicky Girl Travels the World in Most Places. And I just drew a blank about what else I was supposed to say.
And she is in Mexico City. She has, I don't know.
I can tell you this, I am not team bop around. I do not think I am built for the nomad life, which is why I have Miss Sharita here tonight to talk about. We're going to talk about, because I've got 5.5 years, give or take, experience being a fairly traditional expat, and you have been a digital nomad for 3 years.
Yeah, since fall of 2018.
Okay.
But I call myself a slow mat. I'm in between. So there's a
Okay.
third option.
So let's talk about that. How do you differentiate between a nomad and a slow mad?
I mean, someone that I met like in Mexico City called herself a slow mad,
I
and I
know
really
who
like
you're talking to
that.
because she was on my podcast. I
So I
know who
really
you're
like
talking
it.
about.
Exactly. Because when I meet nomads, and I'm 35, so I'm a mature nomad. And a lot of times I meet like 20-year-olds in this community, especially here in Medellin. And they are like, oh, I'm here for a month. I'm going to the next place in the next month, next month. And I was like, I want to run out my visa, basically. So that's my speed, is however much time is on my tourist visa. And then I move on. This year I said I was going to stop or just make one place my base and then maybe do just a few small trips, but it hasn't happened. And I still have so much world to see, and I'd rather see it slowly. So I lightweight bop around the world.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. I see a lot of folks are joining us and are uh, in the chat. I have some questions.
Oh, I'll put that in the private chat. There we
Yeah.
go.
Now you can see the chat.
I'm like,
Okay.
where they
Yeah, no,
talking?
everybody's here. Everybody's here. Okay. So let's talk about, how did you decide that when you were going to move abroad, you were not just going to move to one place?
I mean, a lot of my decisions weren't made at the beginning. My original decision, I was living in DC. I was a lawyer, and I told everyone, I'm going to Medellin. I just want to practice my Spanish. I want to have this experience. I'm just going to stay for 3 to 6 months, and that's it. And a month in, once you meet like one or two people like yourself or someone else who's made it work for so long, you're like, oh, I don't need to go back. Like, this is so much easier. But I still didn't plan on leaving Medellin. I was still fully in love with it, but my visa ran out. And at that time, I didn't know anything about the visa process. So I was like, well, I'll just leave for the required. I had to leave for just a couple of months, and I was going to come back. And then I went to Mexico City, and I loved it there. And then every time you go somewhere, you meet people who tell you about another place that is awesome and has a great digital nomad community or has Black people and blah, blah, blah. So I just kind of follow kind of where the wind blows. Like, if I know that if people recommend me a place and they say they had an awesome time or it's always been on my mind, then I'll move there if it feels right. So it wasn't a decision at the beginning, but once I got started, I kept getting inspired to try out more places. And it's pretty easy. So once I saw that, I kind of made it a habit to keep moving around, but slowly.
But something you said, like, there's so much of the world to see, and I
Mhm.
think as an outsider looking in on the nomad lifestyle, I think that that's one of the things that makes people kind of go one way
Yeah.
or the other, is that
Mhm.
desire to see so many places. So,
Mhm.
like, there's so much to see. Why waste my time settling down in one spot when there are all these other great places I could be?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, eventually, I'm always torn because I'm like, I do want a base. I would love to come back to the same apartment after bopping around Europe or something. I would love to come back and be like, I'm home, but I haven't made that base. So I'm a little envious of you sometimes because I know that you have an established home. Look at your name on the wall. Like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So, so, there are pros and cons, but the way I see it, and this could change if you talk to me in a few months, is that I will bop around for 2 to 3 years. Well, it's been that, but COVID slowed it down. So maybe one more year of bopping and then have a place that's really my base, and then I can take longer trips in between. But right now, there are a few more like big hubs that I want to cover, and it's just so easy. So it's just so hard to stop.
And okay, let's be fair. It's easy because you have a US passport.
Yes, very, very privileged passport wise. Yes. Not everybody has that.
Because for some countries, depending on the passport you have, getting tourist visas or having to get tourist visas,
Mhm.
whereas with a US passport, I think it's is it 158 countries we can
Yeah.
go
Mhm.
visa free or visa on arrival. So having
Yeah.
that little blue book does make it a little bit easier.
Mhm.
Now, I will say having a base, yeah, it's like I don't have to take all my stuff with me when I go somewhere, but like I was toying with the idea of spending a couple of months like in Scandinavia over the summer or something like
Ooh.
that, because
Mhm.
I can't go during the winter. I
No,
am not cut out for that.
that's a hell no.
However, the thought of having to pay rent in two places, that don't sit right with my
It stops
spirit.
me every time, because this place in Medellin, there's a lot of opportunity to get a nice apartment and hold on to it and do a long-term lease, and I have local friends who could help me because you can't do it on your own, um, and I keep thinking about it, but I'm like, "If I don't rent it out, do I wanna rent it out, first of all, to strangers? I think I do, and then second of all, if there's a month or 2 where that doesn't work, I'm paying twice, like, whew, it bothers me. Even if I have an apartment and I go somewhere for like, if I went somewhere in Colombia for just a few days, it bothers me to, like, pay for a hotel. Not that it's expensive, but just on principle, like, I can't I'm double paying, why? So, I feel you there,
It
and it
didn't
has
bother
held
me when I lived in the US, but now it
up.
definitely does. It definitely
Our
does.
sense of money has changed, like, yeah.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. Okay. So you kind of, I don't want to say flew by the seat of your pants,
A little
but
bit.
okay, you weren't very structured in your approach to this. But
Yeah.
if somebody is contemplating bopping
Mhm.
around, becoming a slow mad, becoming a digital nomad, I think there are certain things that they have to consider when they're making that move that might be a little different than if you are saying, this is it, I am immigrating to Mexico. And
Yeah,
so, like, the first thing that comes to mind is like, how long are you going to do it for? Because I would think that impacts like what happens to the stuff that you had or have
exactly.
in the US.
Yeah, I so personally, because I really had that plan of 6 months, I think if I had left like, I admire some of the women I speak to now, and they're like, "I sold everything, I'm moving," and they have nowhere to come back to. I was not capable of doing that when I first started. So I sublet my apartment in DC. I was fully my whole plan was like, if I hate it, I'm going right back. So I needed everything was waiting for me. Technically, my job wasn't waiting, but I was still kind of like keeping feelers open. They were like, "We'll kind of keep it open for you." So I kind of left it open ended when I first left the States. And so I actually kept that apartment for a full year, excuse me, subletting. And then finally I was like, okay, I think I'm not gonna come back to America officially, like to live. So let me let go of that apartment. But it was also really good rent in Northeast DC. So
So that's also a hard thing to let go of.
it was really
What
hard to.
where was your stuff? Was it all in the apartment that you were subletting?
All of my furniture, I mean, it was like low key college furniture, like law student furniture. But my mom, it was all at my mom's house, which I think a lot of people do. I did do a big purge, but I didn't let go of many things. Like I still had all my wardrobes, all the seasons, all my books. I keep scaling down every time I visit home. I scale down because she still has it. My my mom's an angel, and not everyone has that luxury either. Some people have to put it in storage, and things like that. So speaking for me, I took this decision very cautiously. I left everything waiting for me. And the only thing that made me feel comfortable taking that leap the first time was to say I could always come back. And now that I feel very comfortable, I have less of a net of a safety net at home in the States. So yeah, and that's kind of how I advise people too. And they're like, I've never really done it before. I'm not sure. And if they tell me 3 months, I'm like, okay, 3 months, you can go back. And I know they're not gonna. I know it's gonna be longer, but I know I needed that reassurance myself. And if that's what people who are watching have to tell themselves, put a time period on it, and it can make that transition a lot smoother.
Because that's what I would think, that if your intention, as was yours, is to return to the US, no, you're not going to sell everything
Yeah.
because you would be starting over. But
Yes.
there are some people who know that they are done living in the United States.
Hmm.
They don't anticipate choosing one single location. So they see themselves sort of as long-term nomads. And in
Hmm.
that case, I would think it would be foolhardy to put your stuff in storage
Yeah.
and
So
to
many
hold
people are
on to
doing
it.
that
I
because
know.
that's like the double rent thing, and storage is expensive. But I think it's a comfort thing. I do get it, and I can't imagine if I had a family and a house, like my own home with memories. And I had my apartment, but I had only been there for like 5 years or something. But like to have built childhood memories or something and everything, and have to and say I'm going to sell all that or get rid of most of that, I imagine that's a really, really difficult thing to do. So I get why people have their things in storage, but I have so many friends who go home a year later and they're like, I'm just throwing it all away.
Yeah, no, that's because the idea or the decision to put things in storage often comes from a financial place,
Hmm.
that it makes more sense for me to hold on to this stuff. But then, like you said, because nobody thinks about, well, if I stay gone
Yeah.
or I move on, how do I get rid of the stuff that is in storage? Because you basically have to plan a trip back to handle that, which is why
Yes.
so many people are like, just throw it all away. Well,
Yeah.
now you didn't make any money on it and you spent money on storage for a year.
Yeah. You
So,
could
I
have saved
mean,
it.
it's obvious I am team no storage.
Yeah.
Unless you're, like you said, your plan is to go for a really short period of time, then
Hmm.
I get it.
Yeah.
So if somebody is going to be a nomad, that is something to think about, is what's your time frame, because that's
Yeah.
definitely going to impact what you do with your stuff.
Hmm. And what's your
Um,
time frame, good or bad? What if you fell in love? What if I fell in love in Medellin and I really, really stayed? Like there's so many options. Or what if everything went to hell and I ran back? Like I think you need to be prepared for both cases. And I honestly was not prepared to not want to go back. And every person I talked to was like, yeah, you're gonna stay. Like before I left the country, they were like, you're not coming back. And I did not know. I was scared like out of my mind. So
I
um so yeah.
I think once you get out,
Mhm.
whatever the thought was of why you should go back,
It's gone.
like you lose that once you're out, because you're
Your
like, this
stuff.
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't, because here's the thing, and I tell this to people all the time when we talk about getting rid of their stuff and downsizing. If you haven't touched something in a year,
Let it go.
you don't need it.
Mhm.
Like if there's not a sentimental value attached to it and you have lived this entire year, you've lived these 6 months without it, you
Mhm.
don't really need it.
Yeah. This lifestyle will definitely teach you minimalism. Like I have never First of all, like Christmas, I'm so old. I'm 35 and my parents are still like, "I'm gonna get you presents." And I'm like, "Please don't
Don't
get
buy
me
me
anything."
stuff. Don't buy
Like
me
I
stuff.
I flew home on Spirit and I was not paying baggage fees. I was like, "I'm not taking clothes back." I did squeeze some stuff in, but basically I'm saying that I don't even want new things. Like unless I'm replacing something or it's like a major part of my wardrobe, I don't even want it. I don't want stuff because it has to go in my suitcase and I don't want to pay extra. So it's just you become very minimalistic. And I think if you're leading into your nomad journey, if you can start to think of yourself as a person who will be living out of two suitcases or one suitcase, what do I really care about that needs to be in this suitcase, and then start getting it out of your house. I think that that's a, you should put yourself in the airport basically at the airline counter and see if you
Abs-
really need that picture frame.
Absolutely. Because anything I do buy, because I am a minimalist,
Mhm.
anything I do buy, I'm thinking about how much does it weigh? Because
Yes.
all I'm thinking about is I got a 50-pound limit on each of the 3 bags I have. And so
Mhm.
anything I'm like, oh, that's too heavy to own. I can't own
Yep.
that because I can't
Yes.
lug that around.
I have a
And
friend who carries a rice pot and everything. I'm like, you must pay some money for that luggage.
yeah, that's okay. And yes, I am hating on those of you that continue to pay storage. And I'm
Sorry,
looking
y'all.
at you, Rashida.
She's still paying for storage?
Yes.
Didn't she like I thought she had a storage. Anyway, another day. But oh man. But I mean, sometimes I wish like there are things that I keep, like I try to keep souvenirs and I take them home. So it is starting to become a small problem. Luckily, my mom is still willing to keep my room and closet empty.
Your
So sometimes,
mother is a saint
yeah.
because my oldest child left and she didn't make any moves like she was going to come get her stuff.
You like,
And when she did show up, she was like, "Where is all my stuff?" I was like, "Girl, you didn't indicate anything to me, and I am like I can't deal with things that are sitting around and not being used." So
yeah.
yeah, I
That's
chucked
funny.
all that stuff, and her little feelings were hurt. But so, like I said, your mom was a saint.
She
Because
is. And but I think this goes into people's decision making. Like if you really care about your stuff and there's nothing wrong with that and you want to build a home, you're not coming back to America, then bring all your stuff in this house in Mexico or bring all your stuff in a house in Medellin and make that your base. Rent it out, don't rent it out, however you trust people, but that probably needs to be part of your decision and you'll probably still come out better than paying for storage in a major city.
oh
So,
yeah, well, I
like
think it's about the priority. Is the
mhm,
priority to have the freedom to move
mhm,
easily from one
mhm.
location to another? Okay,
Yeah.
so if that's the priority, you're going to have to give up something somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Earlier you said that I fly by the seat of my pants, and I was gonna say, no, not really. I make like very informed decisions, but when you just said like having that freedom to pack up and go, like I was gonna stay in Medellin this time until April, and now I don't know, the earth or the Instagram algorithm was telling me that I need to go to Argentina. Oh, it was probably because of Rashida too. But a lot of things were speaking to me about Argentina, and so now I'm going to Argentina next month. And if I had so much stuff and had like really prepared to be here for a long time and couldn't just pack up and go, that wouldn't be an option. Or I just have to take a trip, and I don't like trips anymore that much.
Okay, because I think that's important is that the life you're living is different than I have a base and I take a trip. It is
Mhm,
you go and you move to this place and you
mhm.
immerse yourself and you live your life
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I get a grocery store, and find the bank and, all those little errands. I run errands, like that's something you don't do on trips. And I really enjoy that. Like even when I was working and just going on vacation, I always like to pretend that I lived somewhere and I just like see what the locals were doing and just sit early in the morning while everybody's reading their paper and just like hang out with them just to act like I live there. So I really do like that immersion piece. Even if it's not a whole year, even if it's just a few months, I feel it just feeds my soul a little bit more.
And not to beat a dead horse, but even if you're not going to do a nomadic type lifestyle, even if you're just moving to another country, I would encourage you to limit what you're bringing, because a lot of people think about, like, I have to get, if I chose this country, I have to love it, like I have to get it right. And there have been places I have moved and I was like, this is not for me. But because
Yeah.
my life fit into 3 suitcases,
Hmm.
I could easily load those up and move on to the next country.
Yeah.
So I'm not anti stuff. I just want everybody
Like
to,
stuff.
I want them to have the stuff that's important to them, that matters, but I
Hmm.
also want them to be light enough that they can navigate the world how they want.
Yeah. And there's just so many variables. It's just so funny. Life is so different in this lifestyle because like now, if I had this apartment and I did rent it for a year, but I still wanted to leave Medellin, if I only have 2 suitcases, I can roll them into a closet and I can rent the place out. Like you give yourself so many more options if you don't just like plunk your entire life down and can't kind of, fold it back up, like you said. So there's a lot of options. Even if you decide to be full time in one place, you can change your mind and say, okay, 6 months, I'm going to leave this place and go somewhere else. I think you need to give yourself room to be flexible, basically. And I think that you're 100% correct is that minimizing your stuff. And then also just training your mind to be like, it's okay to change my mind because it's different in these countries and everybody has their own experience. So everyone might love a place. Everyone might love Mexico City, and a few people hate it. And you could be one of those people. So,
One of those 5 people.
right, it's very few, but you could be one of them. And so, yeah, basically just make sure that you remain flexible physically and mentally.
Okay, so
Mhm.
let's talk about the logistics of living this lifestyle.
Yes.
One of the reasons I know that I am not built for it is the packing and unpacking.
Yeah.
Like, how often are you having to do that?
I I feel like it's not that much, but I guess it is. So I moved here in November and I was in Portugal. I moved there in August. So yeah, that's not a lot of time. And I don't, no, I hate packing because it feels so good to get everything out and you have everything in its place. And then you have to pack it all up. But more than packing, I hate the airports. It's weird to say I hate flying. I'm not scared of it or anything, but it is just the worst. It's always the worst day. I just got lounge access though, so maybe that'll change. But anyway, yeah, the packing and the actual act of travel is annoying, and you have to just prepare for it. But I just like suck it up because that's the shortest period of time that I'm of my journey. If I was in Portugal for a few months, I spent, a day flying and a day packing. So actually in Portugal, I had to buy a lot of winter clothes. So I had to like purge a lot and give away clothes. So it did take me more than one day. But but yeah, that part can be annoying and you have to be prepared for it. But you get used to it. If you don't have that much stuff, I have my little packing cubes. I have a system.
Okay, so that's important that you
Mhm.
have a system,
Yeah.
because like I think about when we go on vacation, we're very good about getting the stuff in the bag, and then the joke is always when you come back from vacation, you can never get the stuff to fit in. But if you are going to be nomadic, you
Mhm.
have to get it to fit back in there.
Yes. So expandable suitcases. And when I left Portugal, because I had sweaters for the first time, because I haven't lived, in temperatures below 70. I haven't even been to Mexico City when it's actually cold, cold. So I haven't needed a proper coat or sweaters and boots. So I had a lot of bigger things when I left Portugal, and I was determined. And they did not fit in my suitcase, but those giant reusable grocery bags. I put some packing cubes in there. Like you'll make it work, but Portugal is probably my worst time where I was not minimalistic. Everybody was very stylish there. So I wanted to step up my wardrobe. So I was shopping a lot. Normally in this lifestyle, I do not shop that much because I can't fit it in my suitcase. But in Portugal, I just blew it all out the water. I was like, I have to look good. So and I bought boots. Like I definitely don't buy big shoes, because they don't fit.
Because
It
they
was
weigh a lot too.
Yes. So it was a whole mess, but there's ways around it. And again, it's all about flexibility. So I was like, all right, am I gonna pay more, lose some stuff, or just be very creative. And I got very, very, very creative. um, and yeah, but I think that is a learned skill that I don't know if I had before. And I've never been so organized and like and pragmatic than when I'm packing now. Cause yeah. And I also try to like take souvenirs and stuff. So I'm a bit of a mess, but I keep them small. I'm still in my suitcase and now my grocery bag and a book bag. That's
Okay. Okay. Okay.
it.
Okay. What about getting things you need, like hair products,
Yes.
medications, grits? I don't know if you eat grits, but
Grits.
I don't, but I know that that's a thing
I was gonna say everyone talks about that, and you can't find them. I don't know why they
because
don't.
that's a Southern American thing.
It's a
Nobody else
grain.
is going to, but nobody's going to grind corn for
Yeah,
that use in other
yeah.
places.
Anybody watching who's in Mexico or any country with minimal Black people, just like make that grit store because people are hurting for grits. They always talk about it. So that getting things varies from country to country, obviously. So the first place I was in was in Medellin, and I'm here again. There are Black people, so you can kind of find Black hair products, but they only just started getting, or I'm seeing in more stores like Shea Moisture and stuff like that. So I definitely brought a bunch of things. Oh, I could show you. When I first came, I brought like big products, but now when I go home, I usually go home once or twice a year. I get those little there are these flat packets of shampoo and conditioner and twisting cream. So I'll use that. And usually, eventually, I'll find someone who's got the hookup or something if I need like a refill or anything like that. But these are really important considerations when you're packing. And another reason why you shouldn't overpack with your things and your clothes is that now you need hair products. You need I've never had a need for a prescription, and I've never been in a country where I couldn't get a certain medicine because everyone else's healthcare system has been better than America's. But you do need to keep that in mind and in your packing strategy and the number of suitcases that you buy. And like I said, my friend, she brings her rice pot. She's Indian, and she's like, I can't play with these. She brings a bag of spices. She does not play. And so you need to think about that. Colombia, there is no spice, no spice. So you have to bring your seasonings, your hot sauce. I have friends in Portugal, and she just stocked up on like her whole suitcase is foods now because she's moving there permanently. So she brought an entire suitcase of seasonings and sauces, Old Bay, something you can't find. Um, yeah, so just think about your favorite meals and maybe like your best comfort food, and bring that, and or research on Facebook in those expat groups, if it's possible to find those products. Now that our this nomad community is spreading, like in Mexico City, I was finding Black hair products, like seriously, especially in Playa. And are they in Mexico City? I want to say.
Yeah, in Mexico City, there's Cantu, there's Shea Moisture,
Yeah.
there's Maui Moisture, and
Yeah,
the
Maui is a nice international brand, I'm
yeah,
noticing.
so
It's getting there.
it's getting there. It's
But it's
getting
not for
there.
us. It's about other people with curly hair.
Yes.
Everyone around the world and all ethnicities are embracing their curls, and it's trickling down to us. So I'm not going to give them all the credit,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm grateful that people care about their curls and they're eliminating sulfates and all of that stuff. But I think, yeah, thinking about your daily routines, your comfort foods, and those products that are important to you, especially like beauty products, Shea Moisture, excuse me, like shea butter and stuff like that, can be really difficult to find until you get connected. So yeah, you got to think about all of that. But I don't usually I just bring the minimum. Like if my hair's out, I'm going to bring like one jar of something, and then I use like olive oil and stuff. Everybody has olive oil. So I use that to seal my
You
hair and stuff like
and
that.
that's the thing. You have to I don't think that you can be nomadic and be married to like a specific brand
Hmm.
because I just don't know how you're going to be able to maintain that in the
Yeah,
lifestyle and not just pay gobs and gobs of money in shipping,
exactly.
assuming it can be shipped to you.
Yeah,
So
shipping's
yeah,
here. So
You learn to improvise. I
mhm,
think any moisturizing conditioner and a little olive oil, that'll take care
yeah.
of most things.
Exactly. And again, since curls are in, like the diva salons are popping up as well. So it's definitely worth doing a little bit of research to see if where you're moving to does cater to that curly community. It's not necessarily a black community, but and you'll be surprised. And yeah, and Portugal, I mean, they're like, I don't know I was in Lisbon specifically. I don't know actually the demographics, but it felt like 50-50, like European and African, Afro something. So there were black hair stores everywhere and it was heaven. So
I went to Lisbon once, and that was the thing that immediately struck me was like, look at all these black and brown people. Like, and
yes,
they are like part of society, not just on the fringes,
you would see
which is
so
a
many
very
friends.
different, that's a
Yes.
very different vibe than a lot of the other European countries.
Yeah, I was so pleasantly surprised. And you'd see like older people, because obviously young people, they usually mix things up, but older people, black and white or brown and white, whatever, they were all just intertwined and it was wonderful. But and there was lots of braiding places and all the hair products you want. So if you're moving to Lisbon, you don't need to bring anything hair wise.
Okay, Asia talking about, so we need to sell grits online. Look,
Yes,
y'all,
that's what I'm trying to tell you.
if you're thinking like, I want to be out there, I want to move abroad, but I don't know what kind of business,
Hair.
anything that can serve the needs of other expats, that's a place you can make money.
Yes.
Grits, hair.
Mhm. If you can do a cornrow, you just need to put that in the Facebook group because the way these women, they're like, I'm here for 1 week. Anybody want their hair done? And this is in Playa. The women went crazy. I went crazy. Like we, because they had those women on Quinta braiding like with this horrible synthetic hair. And it was a braid. It was fine. But I never went. But when a black woman showed up and was like, I braid hair, I'm here for a week, we all flew to her. And the price, I was paying American prices, which I normally wouldn't do, but I was desperate.
Sometimes you get desperate.
Yeah. So
And that's,
bring them grits. Don't sell it online because shipping might be difficult. So bring
but bring them. And if you do hair, like not
yes.
just, but if you do hair,
Yes.
oh
I'm
my
telling
God.
you, and people, and at this time we're not that much of sticklers on quality anymore because you're the only one. It's like because people are like, oh, I just want to do crochet twists. Can you just cornrow my hair back? And there would be a handful of women who said yes, and they were getting like steady clients. One woman was just that was her whole living in Playa. She sold weave. She would come in and out and bring hair, and she would also braid hair, and she was perfectly fine. So yeah, y'all, just think of something, whatever it is we need.
There you go.
a
There you
grits,
go.
a grits cafe. Yeah.
Okay, so 3 years ago, you started in Medellin,
Mhm.
Colombia, and then you went to,
I went to Lima only because my visa was running out. It ran out faster than I had calculated. So I used Skyscanner and found the cheapest flight. So I was in Lima for a month. And then I went to Playa to launch a business and wellness retreat that did not work out. And then at that time, I actually really did not like Playa. I like Playa now. But so I ran away from Playa and I was still intending to go back to Medellin, and I said, well, I'm in Mexico. Let me just try out something else in Mexico. And I saw that Mexico City was popular. That's literally all I knew. Like, oh, this is a city. And I went there and I was just like, okay, I'm not leaving. And I only left because my mom got sick. Like I was gonna move there. Like that was my place. I loved Mexico City. And I've been
that's
back for
awesome.
another 6 months. So yeah. And after Mexico City, I went home. I had a month or two in Guatemala. And then right before COVID, I was in Portugal and Croatia. Then COVID back home. And then I ran away from COVID to Playa again for a long time, for 6 months during COVID, and then made my way back to Mexico City. So I've just been like in a little circle.
Okay.
And I haven't gone further because for the second half of my 3 years living abroad, I've been working like a full-time job, like a 9 to 5 on East Coast hours. So I have to be cognizant of my time zone. which is something else that you all have to take into consideration when you start this journey. However, you're funding your life, you need to keep it. You can make it as flexible as you want, but you have to keep all of that in consideration. So I couldn't go all the way to Asia. I couldn't do, yeah, I couldn't do.
You could have,
I
but you
could, but
would
I
have
wasn't
been
doing.
working in the middle of the night.
Yeah. I had 2 long nights in Lisbon and I was losing it. Like I had to stay up till 1 a.m. Even one time I was on Sheeta's Exodus Summit and I think it was a 7 and I was like I started nodding off because it was so late. So anyway, I can't do the 12-hour difference. But for all of those reasons, I have pivoted into a freelance job situation. So I'm picking up projects that are mostly time. They don't have the time zone doesn't matter. I can't think of the word right now. And so I'm hoping to go to Asia finally this year. So
Okay.
I'm still hopping around.
Well, let's talk about work a little bit,
Mhm.
because primarily you have been bopping around on tourist visas.
Yes, yes. Mhm.
And that, I would think that means you cannot work in those countries.
Correct. I cannot be
You're
employed by that country's employer.
and you
Mhm.
can't derive income. So like you couldn't
Correct.
have clients from within those countries.
Correct.
Have
Mhm.
you run across a country where it was an issue that you were working online outside of that country and you were there on a tourist visa?
No, but and I am a lawyer, but I don't I don't think I don't dig for these things, but, it's also I haven't been in a country where they ask too many questions. They're just kind of like, "Okay, you working." And I think I'm learning that the goals of immigration are mostly the same. We want tourists, we want their money, but we don't want them taking our jobs and our resources. So I just, make sure that I just didn't do anything crazy. I haven't tried to start a business in a country that's perfectly legal, but I haven't tried to do those types of things yet. So I haven't run into any issues. I can't say that that's that I wasn't breaking any laws. I don't think I was. I also kind of choose my places based on openness to digital nomads. So I'm always going to the hubs. So Lisbon was a hub, Medellin is a hub, Mexico City is a hub. So I know there'll already be an established community. I know they're not trying to kick us out for working online. So I try to stay safe that way. It's legally safe that way by following the masses, kind of.
Mexico is an interesting example because what the law says and what
Mm.
people do are not always the same.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
technically, tourists are not supposed to work, but
But don't take our money.
yeah, it's like they won't ask too many questions. You don't volunteer too much. But I ask this, or I bring this up because I think about a girl in Bali who ended up getting deported because Bali is known as a hub for digital nomads.
Mhm.
However, technically, I don't think she was supposed to be based on whatever visa she had. I don't think she was supposed to be there working, and she made the mistake of drawing attention to herself,
Mhm.
and then, along with saying some things that the government did not like,
Oh,
got her
see, yeah,
deported. See,
that's
so
what
you
yeah.
can't do both of those things.
That's what I'm saying, like, although I should so the laws that I look up are what my visa is, what the tourist visa is, drugs, and I guess, like, common reasons that people get deported. Because like, if you go to the UAE, am I saying that right? Yeah, you can't bring I think you can't bring vibrators or
No,
something.
you cannot bring sex toys.
So
You cannot possess
yeah,
alcohol outside of a hotel. You
yeah,
can't, there's a whole list of things you should
yeah.
not be doing.
So these are the kinds of laws I look into. So I don't dig too far in, but I also know better than to call attention to myself. I'm never gonna act like I'm balling out of control. I'm never gonna, if I for some reason am taking a client, I never have, but taking a client that's there under the table, I'm never gonna advertise that. But I think that people make those mistakes, and I'm speaking very generally about when you move over to Asia, because just the stories like that one that I've heard, they get a lot more strict about that, and especially the way
Yeah.
you speak about the government and patriotism. So you just stay below the radar. And yeah.
I think something people need to remember is that being this whole digital nomad lifestyle, this is relatively new,
Mhm.
and the law hasn't exactly caught up. It's sort
Mhm.
of like with the internet and the things that people could do on the internet, but the laws didn't reflect that. It's the same
Yeah.
kind of thing. There's some activities that the laws aren't clear on,
Yeah.
and you're really subject to their interpretation. And if you make yourself a problem, or you bring negative attention to the certain governments,
Yeah.
that's going to be a problem for you.
It's interesting how, because we're privileged, we call it being an expat, a digital nomad, a nomad, but we are immigrants. And I think that
Yeah.
that when we use that term, because that's the legal term, and that's the term we hear in the U.S. when people come to our country. I think when we keep that in mind, it's like, yeah, if someone came to the U.S. and started acting like that, yeah, they'd probably get deported or arrested as well because they're not citizens of that country. So I think you definitely have to. It's like when you go to someone's house; it's not your house. You need to show respect,
It's
and you
like
need
that
to.
talk your mama gave you before you
Yeah.
now go in here and act like you got some
Uh-huh.
home training.
Don't show off now.
Act
But
like
I
you've
think
been
that that's
somewhere.
the rule. Yes, no sex toys. I just found that out in some Facebook group. So
Oh
I think
yeah,
it's giving sex
you
toy.
you can be arrested. You can be arrested for that. That is, thank you, Ziwan, for the. I can never remember what these damn things are called.
Oh, I was wondering why it's popping up.
What are
And
these?
what is that
All,
called? You want cheated?
I'm about to call it a cash app, but that's not what it is. And the word, I can never remember the stupid word, but
A
yes,
gesture of appreciation.
yes, thank you. But no, and it's not just UAE, it is pretty much most of the Middle Eastern countries, that this is illegal.
Mhm.
I would not even bring a massager.
Yeah, I wouldn't
No,
do that.
no.
You
Super
better
chat.
bring
Thank
a
you.
human massager.
Yeah. But you better be married to the human massager,
Yeah, true.
because
Don't get massaged in
couples
public.
who are not married should not be sharing a room, and they should not be engaged in PDA.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my rule of thumb is once I pass Western Europe, I'm like, okay, let me start being real careful. Let me start looking up everything because things are different once you get on that side of the world. And that's fine. That's their house. They got their rules. And yeah, I think the best way to avoid any confrontation is just keep your obviously the best way is to actually know the law, but the second best way is to keep your head down.
Yes, yes. Um,
But
Winnie
you're giving
wants
me
to
some good
know.
TikTok ideas. Mhm.
Winnie wants to know, what part of Asia are you thinking about traveling to?
Actually, right in front of me, I have my little goal board. So Argentina is on there, and that's coming. But you said Asia. I want to do Thailand and Vietnam, and I do want to stop through Bali, but I don't know how long I want to stay. But I just want to go to those places that everyone be talking about. And but Vietnam especially, I followed this girl who was living there all through COVID, and she got lucky because she could stay because she got stuck there. But it was beautiful. Oh my goodness. I can't remember the name of her city, but it wasn't the main one that everyone else stays in, but it was nearby. But the food seems really nice, and she got her little doggy, and so I'm just really intrigued by that side of the world. I haven't been past Dubai, so I'm just really excited. So it's gonna happen.
Anissa out here in the chat giving alternative suggestions to
To the massage.
massagers. I'm not going to put it on the screen, but if you're curious of what you could bring instead, Anissa has helped us out there.
Oh wait. Oh, I was thinking that because whenever I found out about the massager thing, I was like, yeah, electric toothbrushes are the same technology. You know, I'm sure there's a way around all this stuff, but you don't want to get caught in
Yeah,
cussing.
no, you don't want to be the one they make the example of.
Mhm.
Still staying with the theme of logistics,
Yes.
how are you renting places?
Yes. So the place I always start is Airbnb. It doesn't necessarily mean that I stay on the platform, but I kind of do my research on Airbnb. So like before I decided and booked my flight to Argentina, I just did a quick browse through Airbnb to see what the prices are looking like. And so from there, I get an idea of like the range of prices, and I assume that anything on Airbnb is higher. And then I go into like the Facebook groups. And these, well, anyone who's on your channel probably knows all about the Facebook groups, but yeah, those Facebook groups that are usually geared to expats and nomads, I'll look for any listings there. Um, but when I'm initially entering, and especially if it's somewhere I don't really know people, I'll probably do Airbnb for the safety. And then when I'm on the ground and kind of get a feel for things, I try to do a direct contract, or I just work with the Airbnb owner. But I do like Airbnb. I don't love their fees and stuff, but they have so many protections that you don't really get otherwise. So I think it's a good way to start, because you know you should be safe, and you'll have redress if anything goes wrong.
Because like one of the things I have noticed that nomads coming through Mexico City struggle with is finding short-term leases.
Hmm.
Mexico City is not really about
It's
that.
not good for that.
And so when you were here, did you do primarily Airbnb?
Yes. My first time there, I was there for, it was really 5 months. I had 9 apartments. It was so
Wow.
bad. Because it was a popular place. And then I had one bad Airbnb in Playa, and I have never been the same. So I refused to do a long-term lease, a month or more on Airbnb, because it's non-refundable without me seeing it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to book it for a week. I'm going to see it. And I would show up in Mexico City to my apartment, and they knew I wanted to rent for longer, and they'd be like, "Oops, sorry, it's gone." It happened all the time. So the second time, I talked to people on the ground. I met people from Facebook. I met with a bunch of Airbnb people off the platform. Like, I asked if I could view it, and I talked to them and got different prices, but I still found my apartment technically through Airbnb. And this time I stayed in that apartment like the whole 4 or 5 months. This my second go round, because I was like, I'm not doing that again. That was not a pleasant experience, except for the fact I got to stay in like 5 different neighborhoods in Mexico City, which is kind of nice. So I can speak to a lot of the main areas, but I wouldn't recommend that. Yeah.
Okay. Have you lived in any countries where you could like do a 6 month lease or a 3 month lease? Because that's not really a thing here in Mexico City. I know in other parts of Mexico that get more tourists, that
Yeah.
is more common.
Yeah. In Mexico, I mean, in Playa del Carmen, I did get a 6 month lease. And I did find that through Airbnb technically. Yeah, I found it, and almost all my apartments I start on Airbnb and then I go off, but I did find it, and I asked to see it, and then he said, "Well, I prefer longer leases," and he was happy with the 6 months. But things were different. That was 2020, so they were really coming out of COVID. So I think generally it is hard to get an affordable apartment. The prices you should be paying if you're on a short-term lease. And even right now in Medellin, I lucked out. Like, I have my roommate's Colombian, she knew someone, and we are subletting from them. But normally those Airbnb prices are like double what I'm paying and what locals pay. So I guess that's something to consider. A drawback to bopping around is that you're typically will be paying higher prices. Although I do have some tricks. I ask, I negotiate and everything. I get my prices lower, but I don't get my price down to probably what you're paying, because you have a year-long lease.
I
Mhm,
would definitely say that in the digital nomad groups that I am a member of,
mhm.
that is a big complaint that I hear is that the rent, because everybody who's watching this is probably familiar with the different cost of living calculators like the Earth Awaits and what's the other one?
Numbeo and then Nomad.
Numbeo. Okay.
Mhm.
And so they are expecting to see those prices.
Yeah, and
But
that's a
when you,
local.
yeah, that's a local price, that's a long term lease
Mhm,
price.
mhm.
Um, I don't know if 6 months is considered short term elsewhere, but I can tell you here in Mexico City,
Yeah,
technically, anything less than 12 months is not really a legal lease. The
yeah,
only ones that are recognized are 12 months. So somebody looking for a 6 month lease or a 3 month lease, which is what typically nomads want, they
mhm.
are going to pay a premium
Yeah,
because
yeah.
at least here.
Mhm. Yeah, depending on the laws, and a lot of countries' laws are changing in the Airbnb and lease realm because of us. Like they want to protect the renters, and they also want to they want to protect the landlords,
Yeah.
and they also want to protect us because we can be taken advantage of. However, I think that everyone should be asking more. I think a lot of people settle for prices, those high Airbnb prices, and when you know what the local number is, but you also know that you're less attractive because you're staying for less time. I think trying to get somewhere in the middle is not unheard of. And I rarely pay full price on my Airbnbs, so I don't believe in that. And especially now because the prices are going crazy in Argentina, the prices are ridiculous. I know it's high season, but I'm not paying that.
Well,
So I think it's important. You will pay a lot more money because you're staying short term, but I think it's important that if you say, "Hey, I'm here for 3 months," you're going to get guaranteed rent for 3 months. That's still better than that
you
person saying
need to
weekend.
you need to like advocate and
Exactly.
impress that upon them. Okay, so
Exactly.
Stephanie had a good question. How do you decide the price you'll offer when you try to take the Airbnb rental off the platform?
That's a good question. I don't have a formula yet. I do look at those costs, those websites that you mentioned to find out what the low price is. And I guess I have a little formula. And then I'm looking on Facebook where people are subletting. And so they are usually on those 1 year leases, and I'm seeing kind of what they're offering. Sometimes those are the extreme prices, sometimes they're the low prices. And I kind of just throw something out there based on that. I kind of throw it and see what sticks. And if everyone's just like, no, hell no, then I'm like, okay, let me take it down or up a little bit. And I kind of adjust based on the reactions. So in Lisbon, I did the most negotiating because it was coming from Latin America. Lisbon was very expensive to me.
Oh
So I
yeah.
was really, really gunning for some discounts. And someone was just, I don't know why he gave me such a good discount, but I did get a great discount. Um, but yeah, I start on the lower end and just and adjust based on people's reactions. And some of them are like, "Oh, I'll give you 30% off," or some of them are very generous, and they do still want a long term um, person in their apartment. And my message is always, "I'm here. I'm going to be here for at least 3 months." So, I don't mind paying the Airbnb price for 2 weeks or something like that, but is there a way for you to reduce this so I can stay longer? And I tell them, sometimes I'm just honest with them about my budget. In Portugal, I just had to set a budget because it was expensive.
Europe is expensive, especially if
Yeah,
you're coming from Latin America.
yeah. But everyone tells you Lisbon is cheap for Europe.
Yes,
So I just
it
kept
is.
hearing that. So I was like, oh, 1,200 for this studio? I was just so
Because that's cheap for
shocked.
Europe.
Yeah. So anyway, I sometimes I just set a budget for myself and I say that to them. I told them my budget is, 800 euro or 1,000 USD. I don't even think that's correct, but something like that. I set a number if I wasn't getting good results, and then some of them would go below it or they'd hit my budget. So there's a couple ways to do it. I try not to insult them. So if it's $1,000, I don't say, "Can you give it to me for 500?" But I'll be like, "Hey, this is a little bit out of my budget. Do you have some flexibility?" And sometimes they go way lower than I would have ever thought to offer. So what I'm seeing in an Airbnb trend, you didn't ask for this, is post COVID that I think people, rightfully so, are trying to make up for their costs. And I don't think necessarily that rent is going up that fast, like in the few months. Maybe it is, but I think that they're throwing these prices out there because people have been so desperate to travel, and they're getting some of them. But when you say, "Hey, can you lower it?" They're like, "Sure, that was my price anyway." Like that's kind of the reaction I've been
They're
getting.
trying to see what'll stick.
Exactly.
Um, I would say I am curious now that you've brought that up. There seems to be a little bit of tension, at least in the foreigner community here, about digital nomads coming in and being willing to pay what
Yes.
we consider to be ridiculous
Yes.
amounts for
Here
rent.
too. It's getting really bad here in Medellin. Like rent, I know things go up. I know the price goes up, but like people are paying like 14, $1,600 for like one bedroom apartments. And I don't know if anybody has lived in Medellin, but that is
That's crazy.
crazy. And they won't even be like on the main strip in Poblado or in Laureles. They're paying for little, not even full studios in co-living spaces, and they're paying like $800, $900. And I'm just like, y'all, and they're just saying yes. And that's why I'm saying you have to ask for a reduction, because that foreigner, that nomad said yes and jumped on it because they're coming from San Francisco. And now that landlord is going to list it forever at that price. But you say, no, I'm only paying 500. And they go, okay, I normally get four. So, so yeah, you
So
kind of need to
definitely
know.
you've got to ask, you've got to say something.
Yeah.
You mentioned your roommate.
Yes.
Is that typically how you roll with a roommate, or
I've
are
been
you
going
getting your own places?
So when I first started, I always had a roommate, but I was living on savings and like freelance writing and a little coaching. So my first year and a half, basically before I got my full-time job in 2020, I always had a roommate. And I love that. I love it for the savings. And I love it also because I have like a built-in, I don't I don't want to say you have a built-in friend, but you have somebody who at least knows whether or not you're alive, which is great.
Which is a good thing. That's a good
Yeah,
thing.
I really like that. But then I think Mexico Playa in 2020. Yeah, that was the first time where I was like, okay, I'm tired of roommates. I'm gonna get my own place. And I have a roommate again here. It kind of just fluctuates how my employment is going. So now I quit my job because I didn't want to work there. And I was like, okay, well, I can't be spending all this money. So let me knock down my expenses. And so luckily, my roommate, she's a friend that I know from Playa del Carmen, but she's Colombian, and we both moved back around the same time to Medellin. So it just worked out. So yeah, I do a mix. It's just kind of how I'm feeling.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And have your roommates been locals, or are they other nomads?
My roommates have always been locals, and I think that's a little bit unusual, especially like in Medellin. There's a lot of places that have a lot of rooms or multiple rooms, and they'll be all nomads. Um, Yeah, but I've always had locals. My first place was, like, with this older lady I call my tia, and I stayed with her for, like, 6 months for the whole time, and then in Mexico City, it was all, like, young people who had a room in their apartment, so they were always locals. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you need to go now?
Oh, yeah, in a little bit I do. I have a little
Okay.
wine thing I forgot, but
Okay. Okay. So we'll try to get through some more of these questions.
yeah,
Um,
it's fine. Go ahead. Mhm.
what about insurance?
Ooh, good question. So I meet a lot of people, the young ones, who are like, "Oh, I don't have insurance because I can pay out of pocket," and that might be true, and they might not ever get sick. But I'm 30 something, so I can't. Something's gonna pop or something. So I always get international medical insurance, and I use that term. If you looked up health insurance, it would come up, but I like to say medical because I want to make sure that my doctor's visits are covered. Like I go to the doctor, I get a checkup, I go to the OBGYN. The dentist isn't always covered on my plans, but I go to the dentist. I try to do everything because it's way cheaper, but I do like to get reimbursed for it. So I almost always have an international medical insurance plan instead of travel insurance because I want to be covered for more than an emergency. And I think the most I've paid was when I was living in Europe, and I want to say it was $50 a month. And I think I even paid a little bit higher. That was on the high end because I knew I had like some appointments that I wanted to make. So I got a little more coverage for things. But typically I pay $30 a month when I'm in Latin America.
Now, is this with a company that deals specifically with nomads? Because that's been one of the
Mhm.
issues I know about finding insurance. A
Yeah.
lot of time, it's like either it's tied to the country you're going to,
Yeah.
or it is tied to the specific length of your trip, and your trip doesn't have an end.
Yeah, I actually I do tie it to my trip, and I always do about 3 months at a time. So, because the price does shift, so, like, right now actually, I don't have it right now. But normally, I'd be like, "Okay, I'm gonna be in Portugal for 3 months," and I just pay the whole 3 months. And typically, that's what I do. So, that slower nomad thing kind of helps there because I can do that. But there are plans that you can broaden that. You can do like all of Europe. I don't know if you can do all of Latin America, but there are plans that add some flexibility. And they're all of every plan I've seen has been very customizable. And I like to use mine from like really big insurance companies. I know there's Safety Wing and some other ones that nomads love, especially nomads who really don't think they're going to need insurance. But
Yes.
I mean, knock on wood, I don't need anything, but I'm not a spring chicken, so, like, something really could happen. Your
Is
appendix can burst, guys, like,
yeah. Yeah, it
help
could.
me. Things be falling, so and I'm clumsy. Anyway, so,
Is there a company that you've had a good experience with?
yeah, my go-to has been IMG Global, and I wanna say when you go to the website, you'll see another company name that you'll recognize, but right now I can't think of it, but IMG Global, and basically what I've done is I usually type in international medical insurance or expat health insurance and see what comes up, and I ask for a few quotes, and even when in Latin America, I kind of keep the same provider, and when I moved to Europe, I did some more research to compare, and they were still the best ones. Um, and I always make sure they can fly me home or fly me somewhere, dead or alive, very important, um, and things like that. So I do kind of check some extra things that I don't know if those smaller companies can handle. And something else that I always add is like adventure insurance because I be doing stupid stuff and a lot of things don't always cover if you willingly jump off a bridge, they won't
Yeah,
cover
they won't cover that.
your injury.
That's a separate kind of insurance, and a lot of
Mhm.
people don't realize that.
Yeah. So I click it. They always get me on the upsells, but I like it. But I don't think I've paid more than $50. And basically what I do, I haven't had an emergency situation, but when I go to the doctor, I always have to pay out of pocket and then I submit a claim for reimbursement. And I haven't had any issues. I've never even had to explain myself. I literally just send the receipt. The claim form is on their site. It's not hidden or anything and they take it. So
Okay,
it's been nice. And I get
that's
my labs, like STD testing, all of that stuff. None of it is not covered.
okay.
And women, well, everyone's a woman maybe,
Well,
or
mostly
if you
that's
have
who
a
we're
vagina,
here
that's
for.
really what I want to know. Because I would recommend I had like a great experience in Portugal. I went to the OBGYN and they actually discovered a fibroid because their default is to do an ultrasound. When I went there, she said, "Do you want a pap smear?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, like that's the only thing I can get." And she said, "No, we do an ultrasound. If you want the pap smear, we'll do that too." And they found this tiny little thing that no one would have seen, and I probably wouldn't know it was there until it like caused me a lot of pain. So if you're going that way, go on, get all your checkups on that side of the world. I have doctor's visits this week in Medellin, so I can't report yet, but I've heard the hospitals and doctors are so amazing here. There's a lot of medical tourism here, as y'all
Yeah,
know, for more
yeah.
than butts, but other things, but also that.
um, have you had to? Have you run into a situation where you have been liable for taxes in any of the countries that you have been living in?
No. Well, this is another thing where I play, I don't know, but I
Because
haven't.
a lot of places you become a tax resident if you are there for 183 days,
Yeah, and
which
I'm
is
not so long.
more than 6 months. So,
Mhm,
if you're considering being a nomad of some type, that is
mhm.
something to take in mind when you're planning, like, how long am I going to be in this country if you
Yeah,
want to avoid being on the hook for
yeah.
local taxes.
I
Um,
will say that some of these things have aided into my decision to keep moving around because I just don't feel like dealing with everything yet. Eventually, I'm going to sit down because I really do want a long-term lease and a base. But yeah, for now, I'm like, I still want to see a lot of places. I could just skip all that paperwork and and go. But it does behoove you to look into all of these things because there are advantages too, and there's advantages that can save you taxes in the U.S. as well. So that I'm completely not taking advantage of. I'm sorry, I'm the worst lawyer. I'm not an immigration lawyer or tax lawyer, but yeah, I think it's important. That's an important question. Not only to make sure you're following the law, but also making sure that it's not taking advantage of you.
because if you're outside of the US for 330 days, you can exempt your income that you've earned while you were gone those 330 days up to 108,000, give or
Mhm,
take.
mhm.
So yeah. Well, because I have a few more money related
Sure,
questions,
go ahead.
like banking. As a nomad, you are not opening bank accounts in all these
No, I
countries.
don't. Some people still do. I know money people do these things. So if you're a money person and you really, really like your money, some people do. In certain countries, most countries that I lived in, I think you've had to, I guess, become a resident. Like here, you need a cedula to get a bank account. In Mexico, you need something similar.
You
Is
need a
this
corp,
word?
or you
Yeah,
should have a corp, which is
yeah.
like a
So
social security number.
right. In some places, I could get one without going through all the residency paperwork, but I haven't done that. So I have never been eligible to open a bank account. However, moving to Argentina, that will be a short stay, but apparently they have a loophole where nomads can open a bank account because they want those dollars. Yeah. So there, that's going to be an exception that I'm going to have to learn. And I assume there's other places that are doing similar things,
I
but I
don't know
haven't
that I would.
officially banked.
Okay. Well, I don't know that I would call myself a money person, but I guess I am. I would I would caution anyone who is collecting bank accounts in other countries,
Mhm.
because you've got FATCA, where you have to report how much money you have in foreign bank accounts if the total across those counts is more than $10,000. That's more paperwork you got to do. Also, US bank accounts are FDIC insured.
Mhm.
That is not necessarily a thing in another country. And I would
Should
really
do that
hate for you to put your money in this foreign bank account and it disappear and
one.
you have no recourse.
Yeah, because
Um,
it's funny. So because I haven't really had to interact with governments, because I haven't taken that step of applying to like residency or actually trying to open up a bank account, or anything like that. But like, there's a lot of advantages of these countries, and sometimes they have way better healthcare systems, but they're still third world countries, and you do have to remember that because there we have corruption in our government. Nobody doesn't have corruption, but some of these governments,
the
like you can
corruption's
also
a
lose
little
your
bit more out
yeah,
in the open.
and there's no way, especially as a foreigner, to fight back. So I mean, even their citizens can't usually fight back. So I would also caution and just like be very, very careful. Also, where you buy property, because I hear that some countries like Colombia can just like snatch up your property.
Yes.
So you know, it all sounds nice at first, but I think you have to, when you make those big decisions, you need to really, really, really sit down and learn what's technically the rules and how it actually works and see if you're willing to take the risk. You can have a lot of rewards, but there's risk for doing any of that.
So if you're not having a local bank account,
Mhm.
how are you getting your money? How are you paying for things?
So everywhere, but apparently Argentina, I've been using I just use debit cards. So I have a international, like a fee-free debit card. I have the Charles Schwab. I think everyone on this channel probably knows that one. I did just post on TikTok that Capital One 360 has one, and Chase. Those were two. There might be more, but
Fidelity has a similar thing to what Charles Schwab does.
and I will, okay, so technically you are paying, the fee will show on your statement, but they reimburse you. At least that's what Charles Schwab does. So anyway, I put money on that. And that's also nice because it gives me a budget, but I put money on that. And I really only take cash out to pay rent. I'm usually paying rent in cash. And you know, for smaller things. So I just use the ATM, but apparently in Argentina, and maybe Rashida has talked about this, but I think, okay, I don't know everything, but I think that this is part of the way they're going to get more money from foreigners. But if you go to the ATM, you will get a much lower rate of exchange as opposed to going to Western Union or cash exchange. So,
It's better in Argentina, from my conversation with Rashida,
mm,
that you bring US dollars.
yeah, so I actually brought money from home, and then I've read that Western Union is good too, so I can like I have to download the app and stuff. But something else I do, because I pay my rent in cash. What was I say? Sometimes I didn't like to pay my rent in cash. So in Mexico City, my rent was a little bit higher, and I didn't have 800 or whatever I was paying, too much money. So I sometimes have to convince my landlords to use transfers. This is the same in Playa. They're always very scared. But I like Zoom with an X, and it is tied to PayPal. People also use TransferWise, and is there, I guess, Western Union too.
Remitly is another one that I use.
Yeah, but Zoom has not failed me. I've used it in Guatemala, like in some small town, and you put in their, it's a lot like Zelle. You put in their bank information, and they get their money in their bank usually less than 24 hours, sometimes like 2 hours, depending if there's a holiday or something. So that has also been a go-to if I don't feel safe getting that much cash or cannot get that much cash out of an ATM. So not everyone is going to be down for that, but it is very secure, and I love that it's tied to PayPal, so I can complain and get my money back or something if anything went wrong.
Okay, one last money question, and I guess I am a money person because I think this is an
I
important
mean, I
question.
care about this stuff, yeah.
It's an important question to ask. You okay? Do you anticipate returning to the U.S. to live, or do you foresee in some way, shape, or form you will be abroad?
I think I would be abroad most of the
Okay.
time. Yeah.
So if you're a nomad or an expat and you're going to
Mhm.
be abroad, if you're thinking down the road, Social Security may not be a thing for you.
Probably
Are
not.
you
As long as these
doing
loans
some?
are done, I'm gonna be okay. But yes, I'm a little late to the game. Well, I've always invested technically, like with 401ks. So I have at least like my family knew that much. We're not money savvy, but they were like, that's free money. Make sure you get that match, like match whatever the company was. Even when I was broke and I was making very little money, my dad was like, put that money in there because they're going to give it back to you basically. So I had that for a long time. And now I'm like opening Roths and reading up on all of that. I have a couple coins. Well, I don't have coins. I have percents of coins, cryptocurrency. And so I am investing and I'm trying to open up, or I have several retirement accounts that are growing. And even now, I don't have a job and I'm still contributing to my retirement account because now I'm just too old to not be contributing to it.
Okay,
Um,
good girl.
yeah. And
That's
yeah,
the
and
answer I wanted to hear.
exactly. I'm also keeping less money in savings, which is scary. But that money is like basically losing money now if you have it sitting in savings. So I'm making most of my money work for me now, even if it's slowly, it is growing. So yeah, but
Okay.
I don't depend on Social Security. I do depend on my brain still working because I feel like I want to always be doing something that can have an impact and probably generate some income, but I don't want to rely on the man for
Well,
forever.
being outside the US
Mhm.
and not contributing, I think people who are abroad for long extended periods of time or during their primary working years, that becomes an issue.
Mhm.
Um, is there what's been the hardest thing about your life as a nomad?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So because I don't go home as much, I think I always envisioned right now I'm just dealing with home is not going to stay the same. Like I'm gone for longer periods of time. And this is just life. You grow up and everyone's growing up around you and everyone's doing their own thing. So when I go home, like my people aren't just sitting there waiting for me, and that's weird. So like some of my friendships are strained. Some have gotten stronger and have like withstood the distance, but some are just strained and it's just impossible to keep it going. Even if I was home, it'd probably still be the same because everyone just has their lives. But I think that's hard, and it's more noticeable when you return home and everything was one way. People and places were one way, and now they're gone or they've changed. I think that just recently that's been something that I have to like start to accept a little more. Um, and then because of the way my lifestyle is, I've done like some hustling. Sometimes I'm 9 to 5. I kind of go back and forth because I don't like to be tied to one thing for too long. But I think that it's a little bit less secure. Obviously, I don't always have like this steady paycheck that'll always come in. So when I think about it, like, I don't always like now I don't have steady income, and it's a little bit it takes a little bit getting used to. But on the other hand, this lifestyle has taught me that I'm capable of just taking care of myself. I'm capable of making tons of money or no money whenever I want. And it's giving me, I've learned to be so flexible and resourceful that it outweighs all of that. So, yeah. What about you? I want to hear that answer for you. What's been the hardest
What's the
thing?
hardest part?
Yeah. This is me on dates. I ask good questions and I don't have an answer.
What's the hardest part? I don't I don't know that anything about this life is hard to me
Mhm. But you
because
like
like
it.
yeah, like I almost feel like I was born for this. Like honestly, when I went back to Houston in December because I needed to leave from the US to go to Italy. And I kind of looked around and was like, I don't need to come back here.
Yeah,
Like
I think
and I
that
was
that's
okay with
hard.
that. I
Yeah,
was okay with that.
yeah. It's weird now, like, I don't say I'm going back home. I say
No.
like, when I was in America, I was like, "Oh, when I go home," and I was talking about Medellin, like, home is anywhere but home now, and it is very interesting.
You won't I referred to Mexico City as home and some folks got in their feelings. And
Really?
I was like,
But it
but it
is.
is.
I mean, your name is literally on the wall, but even for me,
Yeah, no, I was like, because I said something about going home, and they were like,
yeah.
yeah. When I came back from Italy and I had to go through customs in the US, when I put country of residence, I put Mexico. That, of course,
Ooh,
I
that's
know,
big.
like, and of course, I think I got a few more questions because they're
Mhm.
looking at me and they're looking at my passport and they're like, but you live in
It's a
Mexico.
pass.
But I
Yeah,
do.
you are, your
So,
residency is there. Yeah, but even I think one thing about me, it might be my Cancer, I'm a Cancer, I still have to make it a home, so I'm always gonna when I sit down, even if it's 2 months, 3 months, or 6 months, I'm like, "Oh, that's home," because I return there all the time, I buy groceries, like, I don't live like I'm on vacation in any of these places, so it's like I'm just making little mini bases everywhere I go, even though I have to pack it up after
I
a
think
while,
that's an
so
important distinction that the life that you're living is not like you're on an extended vacation.
mm-mm. Yeah, like, nope, not at all. Like I said, I run errands all the time. I think if that doesn't show that you're not on vacation, nothing does. And it's interesting because it's only I think only recently have I been like, "Oh, home," like, and when I was saying that when I was in America and at home, I'm like, "Oh, I gotta go when I go back home, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that." And yeah, I think I have to grapple with it because it is crazy, but it is that's what this life is. It's wherever you feel more at home, you feel more yourself, then that's home.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not going to hold you. We're going to let you get to your wine event. There were two questions I saw in the chat. Somebody wanted to
Yeah,
know what kind
you
of
said your one.
lawyer you were or you are.
Yes. Yes, I was gonna plug myself, but
Yes, do that
um,
too.
so I'm a corporate lawyer, so I help. My last job, I was in-house counsel for a tech company, but my passion that I would like to get more clients in is like small business owners, just helping them get off the ground, but also making sure that they're following the laws. So I have a lot of compliance experience, so I like to help people get all their compliance stuff in order when they kick off their companies. So corporate lawyer, and I work and I do like freelance law now. So I just have clients and different projects all the time. So I'm kind of just racking them all up now so that I can always fill up my schedule when I want to and have those projects ready.
Uh,
Yeah.
Somebody else, glass half full, asked, have you ever or do you ever plan to stay with a host family?
Yeah,
Like,
I have. Yeah, when I was with my Tia, I guess I don't even know what a host family is anymore because if you're just a family who had an Airbnb, I guess you're a host family. So I've done that, but I have done one officially in Guatemala, like through a Spanish school. If you go to Antigua and San Pedro or Lake Atitlan, they they have so many Spanish schools, actually all over Guatemala, and they're very cheap. And in my school, I stayed with a family, whole family, kids, grandma, mom, dad, everybody. And it was so cool. So, like, just the best experience. And it cooked for us every day. But we still, the students, because they knew Americans are coming, we still had really nice housing, which was kind of sad in their
mm,
not so nice house. That was a little weird, but it was also nice. So, yeah, I have stayed with the host family and it was just a beautiful experience. And then, so like we were saying, I almost always stay with locals if I have a roommate. So I'm still getting some sort of, local experience. And other day, my roommate, her cousins and little kids came over and like we all played games. It was so much fun. So yeah, that's one great thing about Airbnb that you can kind of have that option if that's what you want.
Okay. All right. Now, I have put up on the screen your Instagram. Is
Mhm.
that the best way if people wanted to connect with you? Is that
This
the
is
best
the
way?
best way, but I am also a new TikToker, guys. Woo! For
And what's
now, I'm
your
exhausted. It's the same.
I can imagine it's Sharita's
It's
world on TikTok as well.
yes, it's
Because
the same.
I don't know anything
Don't go
about
there.
TikTok.
Like, don't go.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to pick. I was like, YouTube or TikTok. I'll start TikTok. I'll probably end up over here. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm at the same one, and I have more like lawyer stuff on there. Trying to yeah share more of that part of my life as well.
Okay. Well, thank you
Thank
for dropping in and sharing a little bit of your life. We appreciate it. Go and enjoy your wine event, your wine night.
you.
Thank you guys for coming to hang out with me on a Wednesday night. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do that. Um, and I don't
Somebody said
know.
I'm young. Oh, just tonight. And when they're self-dancing, that's the only time I'm young.
Like, subscribe, do all the things. I'm going to put some links. I can't even remember right now, but I'm going to put some
It's
links
past our
in the
bedtime,
description. It is past my bedtime. I'm going to put some links in the description for the insurance company she mentioned, her
guys.
IG, and a couple of other things I think might be useful to y'all. So, good
Yeah.
night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.